The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good noon, whatever time of the day it is for each one of you. I want to thank you all for joining our IFES webinar for this week. As you all know, this is a series that has been, we just got it regularized a couple of months ago, and it has been a tremendous success. We've been typically getting about 100 people from around the world joining each webinar, and the idea has been to get this community of IFES, the International Federation of Engineering Societies, who are societies from all around the world who have deep concerns about improving the quality of engineering education in their own regions and countries, to get them all together and share and hear from some of the experts in these areas, and also others who are actually practicing on the ground, share their experiences and learn from each other. And I think it's been a wonderful journey so far, and I can see that we've already booked IFES webinars all the way to mid-January, so it sees how popular it is, and we're still looking for people who want to speak at this series. And today we have with us Dr. Michael Milligan. The topic that he has chosen to talk about is globalizing STEM learning, preparing STEM professionals. As you know, Dr. Michael, many of you already know, Dr. Michael Milligan is the CEO and Executive Director of ABET USA. So when I was chatting with him about what he's going to talk about, he said, I'm not going to talk about ABET and accreditation. And so if many of you are expecting to come to here to listen about the process of accreditation to ABET, you probably will not hear much about it. And I'm sure Michael will be more than happy to talk to you about that in some other format. But today, he's going to talk about a related topic, which is really the basis for the accreditation process around the world, is improving the quality of STEM professionals and his passion. He's going to talk about his passion in this area, and that's why he does what he does, lead this organization ABET as a CEO. He has vast experience in various fields, and so let's just quickly walk through that. He is responsible for all aspects of ABET global operations, representing 36 technical and professional societies. Prior to joining ABET, Michael Milligan held various positions in government academia, including 24 years in the US Air Force. He served as Associate Professor, Deputy Department Head in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the US Air Force Academy, and later worked at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. He earned a PhD from the University of Texas, Austin, MS from the University of Massachusetts Lowell, my own university here, and a BS from Michigan State University, all in electrical engineering. Michael Milligan also earned an MBA from Western New England College, a certified association executive, a senior member of IEEE, member of Tau Beta Pi, Eta Kappa New Engineering Society, and a registered professional engineer in Colorado and Maryland. Wow, what an impressive background, the right person to lead us all in our effort to improve the quality of engineering education. So thank you, Michael, for joining us. And what I will be doing, Michael, is let you speak for about 30 minutes or so that you had planned, and then we're going to engage a few of the people in the audience as panelists, and then seek questions and answers from the audience. And so all of you in the audience, please be alert and send in questions as you can think about them while you think about them. And so right now I'm going to make Michael as the presenter, and we will be getting going here. Okay, Michael, you can click show my screen and you will be on.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that nice introduction, Krishna. And to everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us today, and thanks for inviting me to present this morning, this afternoon, this evening, what have you. One of my...
You have to click show my screen first. I think you haven't.
Oh, okay. There we go. All right. So there we go. Okay, enough of that. So what as Krishna mentioned in his opening comments, one of the things that I like to do really is talk about impact. And certainly we have the opportunity to talk about the nuts and bolts of accreditation. I've done that multiple times, and the importance of it and so forth. And that's a great topic. But really, when we step back and look at what difference does it make, I think that's really what we want to spend a bit of time talking about. And more importantly, how do we get our students enthused about what they're going to be doing when they graduate from university or college. And so I just wanted to touch on a few of those things. And with that in mind, let me see here. Okay, here we go. And I guess really it comes down to how are we preparing our students? And certainly engineering, computing, technical fields in general, probably some of the more globalized professions that exist, especially right out of school. Most students will get on teams if they work at a type of large corporation that draws members from
Michael,
all over the world.
Michael, can you just get closer to the mic just a little bit? Just a teeny.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, better now. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
better now. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so what I was saying is, we want to get students prepared to be successful in a number of ways in this ever-growing and kind of shrinking, in a sense, the economy in terms of the world. And so, first of all, we want to define what is success, and I really kind of view success in a couple different ways. When I was going to school, when I was growing up, it was always about personal success, so preparing yourself to be independent, get a profession that you really love, make a good living at it so you can be comfortable in your daily life, prepare yourself then for retirement and those types of things. And of course, you want to accomplish things personally and professionally that make a difference. But I think now more than ever, we ought to really talk to our students about our impact on the world. And every day we see more and more in the news about different aspects of our impact on the world, and not necessarily in a positive way. And certainly our current and future generations have an obligation to kind of address these issues, as we all do, but certainly they're going to be in the prime of their careers and an opportunity really to really make an impactful difference. A few years ago, we had Daryl Pines, who's the Dean of Engineering at the University of Maryland. He was one of our guest speakers at our symposium that we hold every spring, and I grabbed his quote because I thought it was very, pretty much spot on in terms of, kind of focusing what we do as technical professionals and engineers and so forth. But he says how we have an obligation to communities to improve the human condition, and that's absolutely true. That's what makes engineers, in my opinion, very unique. We have the opportunity to really use technology in a way to help the entire world and specifically people. And so the more that we can get our students thinking about how they can use their new talents, their new knowledge, their skills, the abilities really to make a difference in the world. And at the same time, being personally and professionally successful, I think whatever we can do to kind of focus students on that, I think is going to help us all and help them as well. Now, I just picked out a few articles recently that I saw, and kind of run the gamut, if you will, of some of the challenges we have. Here's an article I saw on the BBC. You see that in Indonesia, they want to move the capital. Okay, they want to move the capital city out of Jakarta because multiple reasons, but bad traffic congestion, all those kinds of things. But it's also one of the fastest sinking cities in the world, and so they have this, huge metropolis, lots of people, lots of traffic, lots of commerce. Yet they have real basic problems, real fundamental problems. So how can we as engineers and STEM professionals, how can we help address these kinds of issues? And these are the kind of problems I think we ought to share with our students, because it's more than just them learning about the calculus and the engineering design and so forth. It's getting them to take that knowledge that they have and bridge it to, okay, how can we solve such a massive and fundamental problem as in this case, the dual challenge of climate change and maybe the Earth tectonics changing. Another article I saw on CNN recently, this is in March, about the world's 100 most polluted cities in the world. And many of the cities are, not surprisingly, in some of the more developing parts of the world where some of the environmental challenges, there hasn't been as much maybe attention paid to the environment as it has in other parts of the world, but also there's a lot of pressure just because of the numbers of people, the very fast growth in industry, the fast growth of economies and so forth. That's really putting a lot of pressure on our cities. And the problem here, of course, is you'll see this number down here, 7 million premature deaths globally. Okay, that's a huge number of people. It's really not acceptable in this day and age. And so paying attention to these kinds of things, and students can make a difference. We just need that one big idea to kind of break through that will potentially change the world in significant ways. And here's one that many students actually see, because I've been in many places in the U.S. and others that where we really do suffer from poor air quality, and it's certainly going to affect future generations. Another one is drinking water. We know about this. And so again, back to the BBC, South Africa kind of just narrowly escaped a recent crisis, but they still face a long-term issue with water availability. And the numbers here are pretty staggering. It says over 1 billion people lack water access, or I'm sorry, lack access to water, and another 2.7 billion find it hard to find. So again, that's just a huge, huge number, not acceptable. And again, when you think about the quality of life many of us lead, that we can't get something as basic as water to people. And so again, there's great examples of some of the challenges we can share with students and try to get them thinking more along the lines of, you know, what can I do, or what can we do to address challenges like this? This is a pretty scary article. And again, like I said, these come out almost daily, and that becomes even more and more troublesome when you think about just the scope of the challenges. But 1 million species facing extinction, and that's in our lifetime. I mean, that's happening now. That's going to continue. It's going to accelerate. And you know, not only is it horrible in the sense that these species will no longer exist, but it's all about biodiversity. It's a complex system. As this headline says, humans will suffer as a result. Okay, it's not a matter of it's just, you know, it's a shame that a certain type of animal, bird, fish, whatnot, goes extinct, but that actually does have an effect on us all. And so yet another, I guess, maybe call to action, something shocking that we really hopefully will open up our eyes and get students thinking again about how can I take what I've learned and how can we make a difference in the world. So this is more than just you know, headlines. It's real, and the more we get our students thinking along these lines, the better off we'll be.
Michael, you need to get back closer to the mic again.
Sure. Okay. There you go. Okay. So I think, you know, back to this idea of global technical professionals. What are they all about? Well, global problems, and we don't want to get our students too depressed, certainly, and that's probably an easy thing to do, because when you look at these some of these headlines on the surface, they look like they're almost insurmountable. You know, 1 million species going extinct, you know, many billions of people not having access to water, but indeed we do have an opportunity to make a difference. And so I have used both the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well as the National Academy's Grand Challenges as really good examples, kind of just to focus in the discussion, because again, there's so many challenges out there that we need to address. I think having an opportunity to kind of just even throw this slide up and kind of have a conversation about it, because at first blush, you may look, it might be an electrical engineering class, for example, and you say, okay, how can electrical engineers help eradicate poverty? And maybe most students will think, well, I'm an electrical engineer. It's all about circuits and transmission and, you know, electromagnetics, and I don't know how I can help eradicate poverty. But in fact, they can, and they have a very direct way to do that. And certainly increased farming in productivity in terms of raising crops will help, and we can't do that without electrification. Certainly, you know, helping build infrastructure, and electricity is a critical part of that, will help bring goods to different people around the world and so forth. And so there's many examples. We can just go straight across all 17 of these, and you can actually delve into them and as examples of how, again, students can think about how can I help eradicate hunger, and how can I help create clean energy and so forth. Some more obvious than others, but still, I think it's important to actually take examples and discuss them. The other good thing about the UN SDGs is that there's progress reports on these. So you can Google them, and you can go look at the UN SDGs, and you'll see progress reports. And the good news is there's some actual
little louder, Michael. Little louder.
Yeah, there's some advances being made in some of the areas. I'm not sure why you can't hear me, Krishna, because I'm on a headset. But okay, there is there's some real progress being made in many of these, and I think it's important to kind of highlight that too, because that does give us a sense that what we are doing is making a difference. And so it's not all doom and gloom. There are opportunities to talk about, you know, the positive impacts and things that are happening. So again, have an opportunity when you can, just to kind of spend a little bit of time looking at the SDGs, and again, maybe some of the progress reports on those individual goals. All right, so the National Academy of Engineering in the United States has published what they call the Grand Challenges for Engineering. Some of them overlap actually with the SDGs, others don't. But certainly you could look at any of these and say, hey, you know, how can engineers in the future help solve some of these challenges? And of course, carbon sequestration is a huge thing, right? That's managing the nitrogen cycle, all those kinds of things. But there's others in here. Enhancing virtual reality, securing our cyberspace, all critical components. Sustainability and you know, certainly cyberspace, having a secure cyberspace supports our global economy, and that's important. Obviously, it helps ultimately stabilize governments and other things that are necessary for us to make advancements in you know, addressing a lot of these challenges. So there's many opportunities for students to, you know, use their interests, their talents, and so forth to really to delve into some of these challenges. So again, any grand challenges are another good examples of things that you can share with students. Now, I showed this a couple times because in past presentations, because I think it sums up things really well, especially when you're talking to younger students. You know, getting students interested in the STEM professions, and specifically engineering, is particularly important when they're younger, because you have to get them enthused, you got to get them excited, because engineering, by its pure nature, engineering education is challenging, and more than anything, it takes persistence to be successful in graduating. And so getting students to understand they can make the world a better place is really important. And again, back to my examples, the SDGs and NAEs, grand challenges, certainly it's all about helping humanity. And yeah, I have a couple things I was going to touch on, but let's let me just skip to this next slide. We've seen this, I've seen this multiple times. This is probably one of the biggest visible challenges that we see on a regular basis, and this is all around the world. It's not isolated to any particular region. Some places certainly are worse than others, but you can go to the most pristine waters to spend time swimming, scuba diving, relaxing, and whatnot. But in many instances, you'll see this, especially at low tide, and it's pretty disturbing. This is something that's not uncommon also. You can see the beautiful clear water. You'll see lots of excellent marine life, yet you'll see lots of examples of you know, plastics and human waste in terms of you know, pollution and so forth. And there have to be ways to clean this. So if we think about this particular example, and this is a good one because I think it shows innovation, it shows opportunities, it shows students that, hey, you know, people are actually doing something. There are what they call five ocean garbage patches. The one that's indicated in the center is one of the largest. As a matter of fact, that one is in the Pacific Ocean. And if you've ever been to the U.S., you know that Texas is one of our biggest states, and this particular garbage patch is twice the size of Texas. So it's just a humongous, basically floating debris field, and it gets bigger and bigger all the time, and you know, has a lot of ramifications for all of us. So how can we get people thinking about possibilities of addressing these? So here's an example of a aerospace engineering student who's from the Netherlands, and he founded this company called the Ocean Cleanup, and he's had some challenges along the way, but basically what he wanted to do was figure out a way that we could start to tackle this problem in a meaningful way. And so here's an example of a student who has an idea. Hey, let's go out and try to corral this plastic trash. And so obviously there's different kinds of steps. You got to capture it, then you have to accumulate it, get it all together, pull it out of the water, and then you know, dispose of it. And certainly when you look at the size of these floating garbage patches, it can seem almost insurmountable in terms of figuring out ways to eradicate it. But this is a starting point. And this is a real project. And you know, lots of technology involved here. You can see lots of engineering went into the design of something along these lines, where satellite communications, using some video cameras to kind of track how things are progressing. I know that in his trials, he had some issues with some linkages and you know, in high seas and so forth, and keeping the booms together and so forth. But that's fine. I mean, I think one of the things that we all often hear is it's okay to fail, right? You have to take chances, you have to experiment, you have to be willing to risk in order to be successful. And so certainly you learn through our own some cases our own mistakes, but also just part of the design process is trying different things. So his initial design, as you can see, was again fairly sophisticated, and it's a good starting point. And maybe this could be replicated on a larger scale to address some of these issues. Back to the plastic, other alternatives, and there's lots of research being done in different ways, not just the mechanics of pulling stuff out of the oceans, but how can we get plastic to degrade, and are there organisms that can help us do that? And indeed there are some, and there's lots of research being done in these areas, but fortunately, you know, our current generation is all about video and social media and so forth, and there's lots of good information on locations such as YouTube. And so you'll see the link down there. You should have a look at this. There's a couple-part series on, you know, what would a world look like without plastic. And so I think it's kind of interesting, you know, quite interesting, and maybe give you an opportunity to take some things back to the classroom that might get students excited about this. Here's something I just saw the other day, and this was particularly amazing, and not in a good way. But this fellow, Picasso, took a submarine to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So he was the first human to go that deep into the water. So he went all the way down to the trench floor and some 35,000 feet, as you can see there. And the thing that was really kind of bittersweet is he, you know, this is a great accomplishment, engineering feat, saw amazing sea life that people had never witnessed before. And there it was, he saw some plastic trash in the bottom of the ocean. And that was a real shocker. And in many ways, that was the headline that I saw on some of the news outlets, that, wow, what a great accomplishment, but look how much of an impact we've had. You can't go anywhere and not get away from this. So again, it was just something that I saw that I thought, wow, this is, yeah, this really makes you think about, you know, some of the, you know, the real impact that we're having, and we really need to figure out ways to fix this. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting kind of wrap up in terms of the topic. Now, of course, the biggest problem we all face is human behavior. It's, you know, all the problems were technical. You know, in some cases we'd be a lot better off, but unfortunately they're not. And human behavior plays a huge role. It's, I would say, the biggest challenge, because we get used to certain types of lifestyles. We get, you know, we're creatures of habit. So we do things a certain way because we've done them that way forever, or we've learned it from our parents, or as you see here, there's certain social norms and so forth. And unfortunately, it's a complex web of issues, right? You have political interests, economic interests, personal, public, and so forth. And so we have to figure out a way to help bring in people in the areas of social sciences. And that's why I say, you know, our biggest challenge is not just the technical part, but in many ways it's the social part. So how can we bring together teams of people that have the technical prowess, the technical knowledge to solve these problems, and then get the support of the people in the in government and business, in the public, you know, to support that, because ultimately we can't be successful without a strong team. So I happened to see this article about interesting engineering, and it talks about ways that social sciences can aid engineering. And certainly it's, as we all know, teaming is critical for success in all areas, and specifically in this. And so this kind of just talks about something in a specific ways. Certainly public opinion is huge, you know, with instant news access, you know, our smartphones and you know, internet usage and so forth. Public opinion can be influenced pretty drastically, and certainly some of the images that I showed you are a way to do that. It turns out that I was doing some other reading recently, and we're 80% more likely to be influenced by what we see than what we hear or what we read. So visual impact makes a huge difference. And so thinking along those lines in terms of coming up with solutions and rallying support and so forth is, I think, an important aspect of sort of the, you know, the challenges that we all face. So back to, are we preparing students to succeed? This is a chart that's I've seen in multiple presentations I use a lot, also because these are skills that employers and others identify as being critical in moving forward. And certainly solving problems is right at the top, critical thinking is right at the top. But things like creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, many of the social aspects are critically important. Again, forming getting groups of people together in high-performing team requires all of these types of things. And so I guess my advice and my plea would be to try to get your students engaged in all aspects of these things, right? Not just the technical solutions, but what about the creativity? What about taking some risks and coming up with some, some solutions, proposed solutions that were just, kind of out there? That's good. That's good. Getting students to work together, all those kinds of things. The more we can do now, the more successful the graduates will be when they get out there and start working. So again, paying attention to these kinds of skills is, I would say, it's equally, or in many cases, more important than just focusing on the technical skills of students. Okay, just real quickly, I just want to kind of summarize some of the things in terms of some of the global skills. Certainly, communications is critical to everything, and probably the most important thing, because unless you can effectively communicate, it's going to be difficult. So certain language proficiencies and so forth are a challenge. I think this idea of understanding different cultures and so forth, we always talk about diversity, the importance of diversity, not just in terms of ethnicity and backgrounds and so forth, but diversity of thought is critically important. And that's where the different cultures come to play, I think, in a big way, because certainly people come with different experiences as they grow up, and bringing those experiences to the teams, to the development of sound solutions, again, is something that's not just nice to have, but I think it's critical and necessary. Self-initiative, getting people to kind of work on their own and to get going on things is something I think that tied very closely to passion. And so if we can get our students passionate about trying to tackle some of these big problems, certainly I think we'll be better off all the way around. And then, of course, being able to share those your perspective in a global way is important. Again, a few more things here. I talked about some of the challenges we face. Everything's a system now. So again, and not just in engineering, but with the social sciences. So keeping that in mind is important. Multidisciplines, more and more all the time, we'll see that. That last bullet I have down there, understanding the impact in the global context, really goes towards, again, the solution of these big global problems. I did want to touch, I know I'm running, I'm doing okay on time, but I got a few more minutes. I did want to touch on the Washington Accord graduate attributes. You'll see this is the International Engineering Alliance, the IEA, and the IEA is the umbrella organization under which the Washington Accord exists. And this is just I'm not going to read this, but this is a paragraph out of what they call the graduate attributes, and you can see how they define what engineering is and so forth. But you can see that last part that I bolded there that says engineering must be carried out in a responsible and ethical way using available resources, efficiently, economic, looking out for health and safety, environmentally sound, sustainable. Okay, so all the things that we kind of touched on up to this point, again, is reinforced here. And I think, again, when we create educational experiences for our students, bringing in this aspect of it is critically important, because this is what's going to separate them from being successful and being not successful. And so, again, thinking about all these aspects, and you have opportunities during your engagement with students to talk about these a little bit at a time. You don't have to, it doesn't all have to be one lecture, but spread out over the students' career, I think, is even more effective. So back to the graduate attributes here for just a moment. Again, these are all the things that we are used to seeing and we expect, but here's all of these other what we call professional skills. Everything from how does the engineer engage and affect society, to environment and sustainability. And again, something we've talked about for the last 20 minutes or so. Ethics is critically important. I can't stress that enough. If we can't trust each other in terms of our designs, if we can't trust, motives, we can't, we don't have, mutual respect and so forth for others, it's going to be really difficult to make any progress. So ethics, individual teamwork, all those things that we've talked about already. And then the last one, lifelong learning, is interesting because, when I graduated from school, I thought, wow, the thing that I thought was the most surprising was how much I didn't know. Because when I got into the workforce, there were so many things that I didn't know, that I didn't get an opportunity to learn as an undergraduate, yet I was expected to have some mastery of. So students need to understand it's never-ending part of their professional development is to learn all the time. All right, just quickly here, I just wanted to kind of point out that I think really to be effective in terms of educator and professional educators is it's more than just, again, the technical aspects of students' experience, but the professional skills and the environmental awareness and understanding and appreciation. And bringing all these together really provides us a great opportunity to have a good holistic approach, I think, to, again, the students' educational experience and preparing them to be successful. And the more that we can explicitly, kind of work different aspects of each of these into the students' undergraduate and graduate experience, for that matter, I think it's going to really pay dividends. This is my one little plug for accreditation. We're all about continuous improvement. That's why we do what we do. And certainly, just like the example of the student who was developing that mechanism to extract plastic out of the ocean, it's all about learning, right? Making, you plan, you do, you create, you check, see how things work, and then you go back and you improve. So it's a never-ending loop of continuous improvement. And so certainly, again, trying different things in the classroom to get students more engaged in some of the topics that I've talked about. Maybe see how they do, and then modify things to maybe even improve it more. So again, here's the little plug on accreditation. It's all about understanding how you're doing. It's really about self-reflection more than anything. And again, we as technical professionals, we like processes. We like something that we can put our hands on in terms of data and so forth. And this continuous improvement process certainly lends us to do that, and can be applied specifically to this area of preparing the professional or the students to be successful professionals. Okay, so let's leave this on some good news. The good news is today's students want to be globally connected. I think most research shows that. I just look at projects like EPICS, Engineers Without Borders, and others that really are addressing local and global issues, and you can see students really enthused about doing that. There's been tremendous growth in both those programs, and I find that very encouraging. Of course, they are always looking for opportunities to engage globally, and certainly with social media and all those instant access to communications, they can do that. Certainly challenge incorporating some of these global experiences in a more structured way. It can be difficult. And I was not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I think one of the things that we can all do is really kind of inject it into the classroom, but there's different ways to do it. And certainly if you are more explicit in trying to inject global learning in terms of exchange and so forth, then that can be an issue with about the assessment and accreditation and so forth. But really, I didn't want to get into too much go into too much detail in here. I think the way to do it is talking with your students. Again, sustainable development is critical to all of us as humans on the planet. Ethical practices should be the foundation and the bedrock of everything that we do, because once you sort of get away from ethical practices and start cutting corners and doing things that are not right, then it's a waste of resources, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of everything. Again, talking about the impact they can make globally, and getting them to think about success in a different way is important. Okay, just back to ABET real quickly, because I can't leave without just saying a few words. Our student outcomes, our criteria talk about that, and you'll see that there about the global, cultural, economic, environmental sort of factors, and the impact of engineering solutions in kind of the social context is important. And then of course this diversity of getting students to work on teams that come from different backgrounds and so forth. So with that, just a couple examples I wanted to show where some institutions are actually talking about this explicitly as courses, not a matter of just kind of working it into individual conversations, but Rose Holman, for example, has a couple courses just on this global engineering and the social context. So they're attacking it head on in a very direct way, and I think that's great. And we see more of that, I think, in different areas. I talked about Engineers with Borders, EPICS, two other great ways to get students engaged and, more importantly, enthused about solving some of these kinds of challenges. And I think the Engineers Without Borders USA is a great example. It started in 2002 and now has over 14,000 members. So it's really caught on with students in a pretty significant way, and faculty too. That's important to mention. So Michigan State, I just threw this up here because there are actual ways you can do exchange, and you can help get students to to develop their professional skills globally this way. This is a traditional way, and it's not really doable for a lot of students just because of the cost and the timing and so forth. But I think I'll go ahead and stop there. And if any discussion or questions or whatnot.
There's lots of questions, Michael. Thank you so much for a really inspiring and very a good presentation. This is exciting. I'm going to take a few minutes to just call out on a few people that I have put into the panelists column here to just make brief comments and connect it with their experiences. And then I've got lots of questions from the audience generally, and I'm going to take as many as I can and within the time that we have. Obviously, the big overarching issue here is that as you pointed out, Michael, the challenges are great, sustainability, and the world faces all these challenges, and what we have to do is get our students to go and be prepared for that. And as you pointed out, there are three parts of it. One is the technical part, the other is the skills, and then the global attributes. And as you can see, that most of our colleges really all over the world have spent most of their time on just the technical part of it, and only recently they've been trying to struggle with how to include within the curriculum things that they can help the students become have all the skills and the attributes required to address the challenges that you're talking about. So that's maybe one of the things that maybe our panelists can address and see if they can share some of the experiences here. I'll start with Ramiro, our president of IFES. Maybe can you chat a little bit about that? Hans, I don't know if you left already. Okay, maybe I'll start with Hans because I think Hans has to leave. Hans and then Ramiro. Hans? Come in, Hans. Are you there? Otherwise, Ramiro, jump in. Hello, Ramiro. Any one of you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Ramiro, come in. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, thank you for organizing this, Krishna, Michael. Brilliant, excellent presentation. I think you were beginning to connect the dots. I think bringing the cultural quality is essential in everything that we do. I think Abid's right on target on that. And we have to be more global in everything that we do. And then something that I like in your presentation, there's hope. If we just deal with these grand challenges, there's hope we can solve the problems. And I was recently in a panel where we got into a discussion, and it was interesting that we came up with this, comments that all these, we solved many engineering problems that have become runaway projects now, and they turn into global challenges because we never thought of the unintended consequences, and the ethical part was missing. So you hit it right on target. So I want to congratulate you. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Hans, are you there? Uriel, your comments from you. Uriel, come in. You unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yeah, come in, Uriel. Yeah.
Well, good morning or good afternoon or good evening. Nice presentation. I like it very much. Thank you, Michael. I have no questions, but
it's comments.
congratulations.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. I mean, comments on how maybe how we are trying to do what Michael said needs to be done, because most of us are not there, and so we're all making efforts to get there. So these are big challenges ahead of us. And Rama Krishna from NAE.
Yeah, that was a great presentation. I echo everyone's comments that you put it together and inspired all of us. My question is it's twofold. One is, to be truly global, there are so many different educational systems and kind of local challenges of implementation, etc. So, flexibility has to be a built-in terms of how each institution in each context can reach their goals in a way that is targeted to their ecosystem. So that's kind of one thing. How do we allow that flexibility at the same time be true to the overall vision of this approach? So that's one thing. The second thing I'm asking is that engineering is already very heavy in terms of the credit requirements and things like that. And you mentioned in your presentation that it's very difficult to add more courses and things like that. So how can we do it in a way that it combines curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular activities in a way that it achieves these mindsets and attitudes that we want to have inculcate in the students? So those are my 2 points. Thank you again.
All right. Okay, well, good questions, and I'll go ahead and just,
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
No, that's one of the reasons that we really focus on outcomes is because there are different educational systems around the world. We all understand that. I think that form of diversity is important too. I mean, there's no single right answer, and there's no single right way necessarily to educate students. So having that diversity is important, and certainly respecting different methods is critical. But again, if we focus on outcomes, what are students taking away from their experiences, and we have an opportunity to influence that, I think that's the key to success. So I don't think we should focus so much on credit hours and things like that. Certainly, you know, when we're dealing with student workload and so forth, that's a component. But really looking at what are students taking away, and that goes to your second question. Really is, you know, the whole bucket of engineering stuff is really full, right? How do we cram more in? And I don't think necessarily you have to do that. I think the right answer, or any right answer, I should say, would be more to kind of sprinkle these kind of topics throughout a student's 4-year career, for example, or 2-year, you know, whatever the length of time they're in school. Sprinkle that out, and there are opportunities for faculty to talk about that, and multiple opportunities within a lecture, and it can even be something as simple as a 90-second discussion of an example of a challenge that a professor had in an ethical situation, or maybe again all these articles that I see every day on the internet, maybe just touching on one like the one of the fellow about went to the bottom of the Marinara Trench, and getting students to think about, hey, when I graduate, maybe that's something I had to be addressing. So I think probably, but it takes effort to do that, and you got to get faculty thinking along those lines. But I think it's a natural part of a way to do it. I don't think we necessarily have to worry about cramming it in a particular, in a credit hour fashion. I think, throughout the program is really probably one of the better ways to go.
Hello, Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes, we're waiting for you, Hans. Go ahead.
I had a problem with the connectivity. First of all, a very, very thoughtful presentation, Michael. I really, really value it. The only key point I want to make, and from the perspective of a social scientist, I still see, as I travel not only in the North American context but others, there are islands of engineering in relationship to the others, the social science and other fields. I think these are real challenges. I find too many engineering faculty members brilliant, but not comfortable talking, engaging, working, communicating with other disciplines. And I think that's a real challenge that you highlight to the 3 fundamental themes that you touched upon, Michael. Let me stop here.
Okay, great. Let me go to Elsie. Elsie, come in, jump in. Cue for you to jump in.
Thank you. A beautiful presentation, and I really appreciated how you set up the context, Michael, of the challenge, not only for engineering education, but for all of us in this world. So I'm representing, if you will, the business community, the sustainable business community. And while you all are looking at impacts in terms of system impacts, the business community is starting to wake up to this with this movement called purpose. And so we're doing what we can to help business think of the context in which it's operating, in the same way that you're looking to raise engineering students' awareness of the context in which they will be applying their technical skills. So the emphasis on outcomes and impacts is something that I think the business community is moving toward, and we're doing our best to help that too. And that's why the SDGs are so attractive, the Sustainable Development Goals, because they put all of our efforts in the context of system impact. So, but I do have a question here, and it relates to the separateness of our initiatives. One of the things that I was so enthusiastic about in working with you all on this concept that Ramiro introduced me to, called peace engineering, the notion of engineering in a context of global benefit. And this webinar is an example of collaboration. But I'm wondering, Michael, given your role at ABET, at that kind of supra-organizational level, do you find that there's adequate connection at that level with business and with the development community so that we might collaborate more and thereby enrich the engineering students' experience so that they could see, hey, this is what's happening in business. Are there opportunities for integrated teams or initiatives? I'm wondering your thoughts about that.
Okay, yeah, well, that's a great question. Real quickly, I think, what my discussion is peace engineering in a very, very direct way, because I think we all know that if we're fighting over water, if we're fighting over energy, if we're, if our cyber environment is under attack and we can't, do daily commerce, the world is going to be in a horrible place and it won't be peaceful. So certainly, without blaring out peace engineering, this is it. This is complementary. But to your point about industry, I think obviously they play a critically important role. I mean, I view industry as certainly one of our largest constituents in terms of ABET. That is, students graduate. Well over 100,000 students come out of ABET programs every year. Many of them go on to work in industry, and so we have a very direct connection with industry through advisory. We have our own advisory council that advises our board of directors. All of our programs that we accredit have some type of industry connection. They have to, because the whole idea of continuous improvement is there has to be a constituent base that's providing feedback. And so that's part of it. Now, to take that a step further, I think in terms of getting more, even tighter collaboration, I think if you, and I can't remember the numbers here, but if you look at, do a little bit of research on the SDGs, there's, I think most of the Fortune 500 companies have signed up as partners in terms of pledging to help address these, because, certainly in the context that I provided, it's a human, it's a threat to our human existence, it's a threat to our planet. But from a business point of view, it makes sense for us to do these kinds of things. And that's actually quite a great, that's a really good thing, right? I mean, for businesses to be successful in the long term, they have to figure out ways to be sustainable as well, because there's limited resources. We all know that. We want to expand markets. We want our economies to grow, to be healthy, and all that. So there is definitely a direct connection. And you see different opportunities, though. I think for industry to play a more direct role. And there's lots of institutions that do lots of I'm trying to think of the word, collaboration with hiring students for internships and things like that. So yeah, Krishna wants to move on. So
Elsie, anything else you want to follow up or move on? Elsie? Okay,
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike.
Elsie, you raised a very, very important point, and ABET, Michael gave a very great response. And there's a comment here from one of the participants from India, from MIT University, talks about the how IEEE is actually has the IEEE EPICS program, and what they do is they get industry partners to kind of provide some funding and mentoring for students to work on these kinds of projects, and they call it humanitarian engineering. Perhaps a lot of the professional societies that are associated with ABET can do similar things, and maybe ABET can encourage them all to do this. On the one hand, if students have to work on these kinds of social projects and develop the kinds of skills that are needed, they will need to actually get some funding to work on the projects and build some things and so on. So that's where, and at the same time, they have to be mentored, because most of the traditional faculty are not prepared or able to mentor students along these lines, and so you need industry partners to mentor them. So there's a combination of things, that mentoring as well as financial support that can be provided by industry along with the good project ideas. I think many of the academicians are getting ready to work in this mode, and so it's just a question of some of us to help make this happen. So then there is another comment here from Aditya Bhatnagar. In the 5 years, the skills have changed radically. All the needed skills. How would you recommend STEM programs in colleges and schools to adapt, because of all the skills that have changed rapidly? Any comments on that? Because the last 5-10 years, tremendous change in the skills that are needed.
Well, I think it goes back to the earlier conversation about the industry collaboration and so forth. That's part of that, that input on our continuous improvement. We need to hear from industry and others. What are the skills that you're looking for? And I actually, we all assume things in terms of, the most modern software tools, those kinds of skills and so forth. But really, I think where you see most of the changes on that professional side, right? What are students exposed to in terms of preparing them to be, great team members, to be impactful when they step into the office or they get on the field, and what kind of experiences they can draw on. I think the biggest change I see, certainly when I was an undergraduate versus now, is how many more students are really doing internships and really getting some practical, work experience or certainly experience to their professions before they even graduate. And more of that is important. And then again, sprinkling in that whole idea of what's the impact on the planet and how can we come up with better and more sustainable solutions in all aspects of life.
The technical question, is there a connection between water scarcity and plastic usage? One of the participants asking.
You know, I guess I don't know. I mean, that's, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Well, Mindy Reiser has a comment. I think she says we can integrate discussion of social consequences of engineering projects, and invite social scientists, sociologists to participate in dialogue with engineering instructor or co-teach specific class sessions. It's a fantastic idea. You want to comment on how, if there's something like this, things like that are happening in some of the colleges that you visit, Michael?
Well, you know, there's some of that, and some are more explicit than others. And I think one of the Engineers Without Borders is probably a great example because that brings in lots of different types of individuals, and they have been working aggressively and being invited by universities to integrate more of those kinds of topics into the undergraduate experiences. But one thing I'd say about the whole social science thing is I think individually we can reflect on our own lives. Right, we're just not technical robots that march around all day. I mean, there's a social part of our own lives that we can share with people in terms of just the importance of trying to work with others and come up with good, impactful solutions to problems. I mean, I think that it becomes more authentic that way too. If we can just reflect a little bit on our own experiences and the things that we see, and we learn our own families and how we're concerned about our children or what our parents are doing or what you see when you travel. I think that's more impactful than, and necessarily in many ways, than just trying to plug something in to kind of make it work. I don't want to discourage people from bringing in more social scientists specifically, but I think maybe baby steps, just reflect on our own lives.
Great. So there are a couple of comments here. I'm going to just start wrapping up because we're running out of time. I think a couple of comments, I'll go back to the theme that I also emphasize, which is getting some of our industrial professional societies like ASME, ASCE, IEEE to become more actively engaged in this issue by acting as mentors to the students who are working on these kinds of projects, as well as providing opportunity, seeking out projects in the community. I think you rightfully mentioned that the Engineering Without Borders and EPICS, we just had a gentleman from Engineering Without Borders in India join us, but I think he seemed to have left, Ashok Agarwal. And so these are the kinds of things, and the IEEE is doing EPICS. I think if we have all the professional societies working with colleges and communities, to identify specific projects where students can work and also provide mentoring and funding, I think that kind of a global ecosystem that can be created bit by bit can start making a dent, I feel, while at the same time making these institutions much more accreditable by our agencies such as ABET. I think that's I think it's all going to tie in together. So let's see if you have any final comments, Michael. I'm going to go back to publicize a little commercial here in just a minute. So, yeah, but go ahead.
No, I just say one thing. Yeah, I think talking about the societies is critically important. We're made up of 35 professional technical societies, and without question, I would say each and every one of them are committed to solving some of the challenges that we talked about. I mean, IEEE's tagline is advancing technology for humanity. That's what they're all about. And ASME and others, and it's just a matter of now getting those large organizations maybe to collaborate in ways that we haven't maybe done in the past to make it even more impactful. So we're all headed in the right direction. I think we're all in lockstep in terms of our view on the challenges and where we need to go. So I think that's a real positive, right? It's complementary. We don't have to argue and have discussions about that. It's just a matter of how to implement. So let me just close on that and turn back to Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm going to get back to my screen, and what's important is that we have to continue these kinds of dialogues and start taking, as you said, baby steps towards some of these issues. And it's not easy, and that's where I guess, as Elsie said, the industry should be involved, and as others have been talking about in this group, also getting social scientists involved. And in order to address all the dimensions that we have not been focusing on, we've been mostly focusing on the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy and the pedagogy, with the technical engineering skills. So anyway, so what I would like to do is switch to a little bit of a commercial, and I'm trying to find my thing over here, which will give us the. This is the World Engineering Education Forum. One of the things that IFES does very well is every year have an annual conference in a different part of the world. And of course, GEDC, which is a sister organization of IFES, is very much involved. And they have their alternate years. They work together with IFES on the reef, and they have their own conferences in other years. This year, fortunately, is the hosting is in India. WEAF 2019 is in India. So I'd like to welcome you all who are a part of this webinar, as well as others. And by the way, whenever you get a link from us for these webinars, you can forward it to colleagues. And I'd like to challenge every one of you, to forward the link that you get to at least 5 of your colleagues, so that they can register on their own using the same link. So let us expand the group that is having these discussions and dialogues. We have this face-to-face opportunity to meet at WEAF 2019. It's going to be in Chennai from 13th to 16th. And I'm just going to scroll down very quickly to point out some of the important things. This is co-organized by IFE, so obviously is the main organizer, and then the host is VIT Chennai. IUC is helping out, and EPSI is Society in India. Then we have the student groups, Scale and Speed, working on the Global Student Forum. Details of that is going to be evolving, and that's happening in parallel with the World Engineering Education Forum. I want to encourage each one of you to send students to come to these this Global Student Forum as well. The theme, as you can see, is disruptions of engineering education for sustainable development. Exactly what we are talking about today in this webinar. How do we change our traditional way of doing things and move in the direction that Michael has so very well described in his presentation? These are the fee structure and the contact and then the deadline. You need to keep that in mind. The deadline is workshop for proposal submissions and abstract submissions is June 30th. This is coming up very soon, in about a month. Then abstract notification acceptance, then registration of accepted authors, and submission of camera ready September 30th. Encourage all of you to think about submitting papers about your experiences, about your thoughts on how to transform engineering education towards making the world more sustainable. And here are some of the things. Particularly want to point out the Duncan Fraser Outstanding Educator Award. There is still time for you to submit nominations for that award. So please do so. And then we will, during that visit, we'll be visiting a very nice incubation cell research park from IIT Madras, one of the premier institutions in India. And the Global Student Forum starts on one day earlier, and so encourage your folks to do. And now to make it a lot more attractive for you, for the international folks particularly, we have organized two tours, two options. One is a 5-day tour option, another 4-day tour option. One goes from 17th to 22nd. Immediately after WEAF, you can go to see the Taj Mahal, go to Jaipur, Agra, and Delhi. And so it's a very good deal. If we found a travel agent who can help us out with this. So immediately after the WEAF, we take you to Jaipur, Agra, and Delhi. That's a 5-day tour, and this is a 4-day tour, a little bit, and so 4 nights. And so and you will stay at the best hotels in India. I think Indian hotels, the 5-star hotels, are very well known for the hospitality. So you'll stay at those, and we have some professional guides who will take you to all these places. So keep that in mind. Plan to submit a paper. Plan to come to the tour and do all kinds of fun things. So with that, I'm going to see if somebody's trying to get my attention from among the panel, and let us see. Okay, so anybody else? This Hans, you want to add anything? Are you still there?
I'm still there juggling my move this morning. Great session here, and I really want to see all of you in Chennai. We're working with some awesome partner there at VIT and student leadership and so forth. It'll be a pleasure to see all of you in person in November. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Ramiro, you want to add anything? As president of IFES hosting the event. So
just to reiterate the invitation so we can all meet face to face. And I think Michael's idea, maybe we can organize a forum where can we bring all important stakeholders, industry, academia, government agencies to really talk about how to collaborate and better. I think that would be an awesome thing to do.
Perhaps you can bring all the professional societies, IEEE, ASME,
all the societies,
the Indian chapter heads. Maybe we can try to approach them.
I think that's something that we should think about it, and
figure out a way to get to them and bring them in there and have this dialogue.
I like that idea. So thank you, and all the best for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, and Michael, for your presentation and for the excellent discussion that has followed. And hopefully we see all of you in Chennai in November.
Okay, Krishna, thank you.
Thank you.
Stuff here.